Hey, Ann, it's me.
Hey, yeah, don't let Dan in yet.
That's what I figured. Yeah, I'm just going to send a message to the people that are in there that say, good morning. We'll start at 10 a.m. Early birds.
Yeah, so my printer would not work this morning, so I'm gonna have my script on my phone. I'm so irritated.
Oh, that is annoying.
But
The worst.
anyway, okay, I need to freshen my lips.
No. No.
And so I just double checked because this is a round table. We can see everybody, right?
Yeah, like I'll let everybody turn they're allowed to all turn their video on.
Okay, yeah, that's what I have in my instructions. So I just
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to like figure out my virtual background situation here real quick.
Yeah, for some reason, the only thing I don't like, I like, but for some reason my green paint in my living room looks like, it looks like puke colored rather than the southern green.
No, it looks fine.
Oh.
It looks fine. It does not look puke colored. That was not what I thought. I was like, look at that barfy paint color. But I am taking a cue from you. I'm gonna do my Christmas tree.
Isn't it fun? Yeah,
I
really like it. Yeah.
And I made Philip Burger by like basically the biggest Christmas tree possible.
Yeah.
This year. And so.
Well, I really do miss a real one.
Yeah, I'm a little bit proud of it, to be honest.
Oh, good. Yeah, I really wish I wasn't allergic.
Oh, yeah. No, don't do that to yourself. Like it's not.
So tell me, when my eyes are like this, what
does
that look like?
It looks like you're looking to my downward right.
Does it look weird? Because that's where my
script. Oh, where your script is? No, I think it's fine. Like, I wouldn't stress about it too much. I'm sure that people are used to,
Okay, and can you remind me how when I go to the little comment box, on the bottom of my toolbar bar, like it's giving me the thing to turn on notifications, but the thing is, I'm getting notifications, but it's not turned on.
So let me make you co-host and see if that fixes.
Oh, there we go. Alarms off. Is that what I hit?
Oh, for your computer. Yeah. So yes, okay. In the downward right, you want alarms off.
Okay.
Correct.
Screwing me up. Okay.
I know. I honestly, like, I don't ever get it quite right either, to be totally
fair. Pleasure to see you this morning. Let's see. All right. So then, all right. Okay, so I'm gonna have to move that to share. Wait, where's the share screen thing? Share screen.
Okay, you got it. Cool.
And that. Okay. Should I go ahead and put that up? Oh,
oh yeah. There you go. There you go.
Do I go ahead and start it?
It depends on what you want people to see. Here's Stan. Stan's here. Wait a minute.
So what is showing now?
This is showing the presentation. So like I have you on the right-hand side. Good morning, Stan. Okay. And then the
Stan.
Presentation.
Good morning, everyone.
Okay, cool. I guess I'll just keep that up for now.
Okay. Sounds good.
So Stan, you know Sarah? Y'all met before?
Have we met before, Sarah?
I don't think so. I'm the communications manager at SIA, so I will be kind of running some stuff in the background for you guys today. So just feel free to chat me if you need anything or have questions. I've made you a co-host so you can share your screen if needed. But then otherwise, we don't have we don't have the souped up Zoom. We just have the basic version. So we don't have like a lot of extra bells and whistles in terms of like chat stuff, but feel free to just ping me if you need something.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, cool.
So Stan, can you tell me if these are viewing, hold on. Oh, those are fuzzy. Hold on.
Look at those nicely dressed shovel people.
Hold on, I'm just getting to your slides. Do they look?
Yeah, they
like
look
they're
good. Yeah,
supposed to.
good. Yep. How do you like my color coordinated dog?
Huh?
Go back. I don't know if you noticed my color coordinated dog.
Oh, it's covered by the video, so I didn't catch it when I saw it. Lovely. What's his name?
That's Epi. She.
Epi?
Yep.
She? Okay.
Is in epicenter. Yeah, these are looking good.
Nice.
Okay.
Fun, fun, fun.
Good.
That one looks that the only one, that's the only one where you can't see the
Citation.
the citation, but
Okay.
that's fine. Blue Green Alliance doesn't deserve credit anyway. What the heck?
Let's see. Making sure. All right, we'll go back there.
So are we just going to have people dropping in, like, are people coming into specific rooms? There's not like a.
We're not doing breakouts.
Right. So everybody who signed up for this session is just coming into this session.
That's correct.
Correct,
Yeah.
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 Smart.
They all are, have their own individual links for each, of the different sessions for the whole, event. So.
Right. That's a good way to do it.
We'll see.
In theory.
Yeah. This is all kind of a grand experiment for us.
So Stan, when I'm doing kind of the overview part on my presentation, I am talking about how the U.S. has reached more than a 1.5 million EVs, increased models or whatever. That doesn't go over your forecast and charts and stuff, does it? Should I just leave that out?
No, not at all. I mean, I'm just
Okay.
showing that one Bloomberg slide just to be able to say, look, this is global. So when we talk about economic development, right, it's not only about the US market, it's about the world market. It's about US companies being competitive in that global market.
Yeah.
So that's the point of that slide. And then I'll just hone in on the Southeast and, I'll make reference to, some of the additions that have come in since this data got published. Arrival's announcement to invest in the Rock Hill, South Carolina plant and the Duke pilot.
Yeah, if you want to elaborate on that, I do have that like pictures of kind of doing the rundown of the Southeast.
Yeah, no, go for it. I'll just make note of it because the numbers on the slide that shows Southeast investment and whatnot don't account for the Duke pilot approval, don't account for Tennessee's $35 million investment in GM worker retraining. Right. Doesn't include Arrival's announcement. So I'll just make references to those just to point again to the fact that it's growing every day.
Yeah. Okay. Super.
I'm just going to try to set the stage for the conversation, right? And just try to get people to realize, this is real and present.
Yeah. And if you want to say those things to help further emphasize and just kind of repeat.
Exactly.
So that'd be great.
You got it. I was going to mute myself for a moment here, but I am in and present and ready to rock and roll.
Great. Thanks.
And because my name is so short, I took the liberty to spell out my last name instead of just the last initial.
Yeah, well, I've been noticing Stan, like they
do rhyme
in meetings.
Exactly.
Y'all need to start a band.
Stan and Ann.
Yeah.
Stan Ann. All right. I'll talk to you all in a sec.
Okay. People are rolling in, 8 people.
I've messaged folks in the waiting room and just say like, hey, we're getting started in 5 minutes, just so you know, so they're not just like languishing in there.
Great. So I just pulled up my chat. Can you see that?
Your chat?
Yep.
No, the chat is like a universal.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, so like everybody, yeah, so you can see like down in the to box, you can do like specific people here in the meeting. So like once everybody is in the room, you can do anybody individually, or you can do everybody. You know, you can see how you can kind of drop down and pick who you're speaking to.
So I have a question. I was just like toying. So since I pulled up the chat, okay, never mind. That works now. Okay.
Okay, cool.
I panicked. Okay.
No worries. That's what I'm here for, to quell the panic. Or at least, you know, do my best.
Yeah. I always get a little jazzed up.
Oh yeah, no, it's a frenetic energy situation. I get it.
Do you know if Perry's in the waiting room yet?
Let's see, I don't see her. Oh no, she is here. I'll let her in. She can be select. Does she need? Does Perry need co-host abilities?
No.
Okay. Good morning, Perry.
Looks like she's still connecting.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Hey, Perry. If you can just, you know, open a Word document for the notes and just begin taking notes when the round table portion starts.
Okay.
Thank you. Good morning.
Yeah.
Did I say that? I don't know.
Fine.
All right, I'm gonna start letting everybody in, okay?
Sounds good. Good morning. Glad to see all these shiny faces coming in. We will get started shortly. We have just letting people in through the waiting room and have a great crowd registered for today. Morning, everyone. Exciting to see where everybody is in the car, Stuck in a grapevine. Good to see you all. Welcome. Let people gather here. Just going to give it 2 more minutes and then we'll get started. Thank you all for being here this morning. Morning. All right, we are going to get started. Thank you everyone for being here today. It is such a pleasure to see you all. We have an amazing group who have registered. For those who don't know me, I am Ann Blair. I'm the Director of Energy Efficient Transportation for the Southeast Energy Efficiency Alliance. And you have joined a session today called Electrifying the Southeast Economy. And as our full series title suggests, a path forward, we want to work with you to help chart a path for doing and expanding electric transportation in 2021. So this session is going to be a roundtable format. We want dialogue. I will be kicking us off with an overview of some of the information on the industry, doing some context setting for our discussion. And that will be followed by a short presentation by Stan Cross with the Southern Alliance for Clean Energy. They've recently published a report that they did with Atlas Public Policy on the state of technology deployment and manufacturing in the Southeast. So for some general housekeeping, we have set it so that we can see and hear you. So be mindful of that and make sure that you keep yourself on mute when you aren't engaging in the discussion during that portion of the meeting. If someone does go off mute, Sarah Berger, our communications manager, she is on today, and thank you, Sarah, for all your hard work with this. She will be able to mute you. All right, so during the roundtable portion, I also want to remind you that if others are speaking and you would like to, we do have a large group, so please raise your hand to speak or wait for the person to finish before you engage. Please do put your video on if you're able to. It's great to see your faces because we can't be in person, and I certainly miss engaging with you all. So I think that addresses all of the housekeeping items for today. Sarah, have I missed anything before we get started?
No, I think you're good.
All right, great. All right, well, first, an introduction to SEIA for those who may not be familiar with us. Let's see, look at my slides going. SEIA is a regional nonprofit organization, and we work to advance energy efficiency and energy efficient transportation. And we work in 11 states in the Southeast, including North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, Georgia, Louisiana, Kentucky, Mississippi. I think I've named all of them, but we are work regionally and excited to have many of you from a diverse range of those states as well as nationally today. All right, just to cover a little bit about our values. These are really important to us and I think help frame our discussion for today. Our values are take initiative. We take responsibility for realizing a better quality of life in the Southeast. We value others. We seek, respect, and promote diverse perspectives. We also work to earn trust. We pursue our values with benevolence, competence, and reliability. And we work to pursue equitable solutions. We recognize, acknowledge our history of prejudice and inequality in the Southeast communities and the role it plays in the issues that we address. So just a little bit about our electric transportation goals and objectives. We work to expand energy efficient transportation policies and programs in the Southeast by serving as a resource for stakeholders like you on energy efficient transportation information. We support state policymakers and provide technical and analysis on energy efficient transportation options for policymakers, state agencies, utilities, and others. We work to cultivate state-based leaders to ensure that all our communities are empowered with information to help them do better work in this space. And we work to increase consumer awareness. All right, so moving on now. We do our work focused on really, if you will, 3 buckets of information. How do we advance access and availability to more vehicles? And this includes light, medium, and heavy duty vehicles. What are programs to increase charging? We need vehicles and chargings really to grow together. So what are those opportunities to expand charging? And last but not least, how do we increase consumer awareness about electric transportation? So currently, the auto industry is in the midst of a major revolution, one that's electric, connected, and autonomous. These new technologies offer new business opportunities for our country, our states, and our local economies, helping attract new businesses, new job opportunities, help keep money circulating in the local economy rather than sending money out of state. In Georgia alone, we spend more than $30 billion annually on oil imports to Georgia. So electric transportation really offers new opportunities for growth for utilities, for the automotive industry, for technology. The South has become a leader in this and become quite a hub of EV opportunities. Many new companies in the sector are beginning to locate here. And the region, if we do things right, will be a true leader in this space. We know there will be challenges and opportunities that are not yet tapped for state and local policy. What should we do in this space to help advance it? To that end, SEIA is working to develop resources and guidance on these opportunities and challenges that the Southeast faces in industry growth. What's happening, what's expected, looking at the equitable job opportunities and economic development, and what policies do we need? And so we want to engage you in this space. Today, despite the growth and recent news that we've seen, electric vehicles still make up just a small portion of the cars and trucks on our roads. The good news, though, is the US overall has reached more than 1.5 million vehicles in the US. There's been major investments in charging infrastructure, new models released every year with longer ranges. Manufacturers have made commitments. There's been over $1 billion in utility EV programs. Many large and small businesses from UPS, Amazon, Walmart, and others who are making firm commitments to expand. All major auto manufacturers have made commitments to transition all or part of their fleets to electric. And a lot of what is driving this is states are setting goals to reduce emissions. Businesses are setting goals to reduce emissions, and this plays a critical part in moving the game. The number of EVs and type is growing dramatically. As you'll see from this chart from EPRI, The range of vehicles that'll be offered over the next even just 3 years is going to profoundly change. We're going to see more SUVs, more trucks, and more choice means more EVs for consumers. As I mentioned, the Southeast really is becoming a hub for electric transportation, particularly manufacturing. Here are a few snapshots of some of the things that we're seeing. In Virginia, Volvo just last week announced that they will be building their long-haul truck, the VNR Volvo truck, at their facility in Virginia. In North Carolina, we are expecting to see some additional infrastructure and manufacturing in mining and battery production. In South Carolina, they are a huge leader in this space. We've seen Arrival, which is making many of these cargo vans. They've located, or they are building a micro facility in Rock Hill, South Carolina, and they will be supplying vehicles for UPS as well as many others. Proterra, an electric bus manufacturer, is also located in South Carolina, as is BMW and many others who are increasing their production of electric transportation there. Over on your left, you'll see this is a snapshot of SK Innovations. This is one of 2 battery plants that are being constructed in Georgia that will help support the market. In the center there, you'll see a snapshot of Governor Kay Ivey of Alabama. She's made a large commitment to support electric transportation in that state. Particularly, this picture is from the groundbreaking for the Mercedes-Benz plant. And then on the right, you'll see, and this is just one of many announcements in Tennessee, but General Motors is investing billions of dollars in building electric vehicles in Tennessee. And not only are cars and trucks being built, but also the component parts. This is a snapshot of a Proterra composite from one of the partners. And the Southeast is really supporting a range of inputs into the electric market. You'll see on the right is one of the finished buses in Orlando, Florida. All right, so now I'm going to transition and Stan Cross is going to provide an update from his perspective and results of the report that they recently released. So Stan, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Anne. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I appreciate the opportunity to share some of the research that Atlas Public Policy and SACE did, looking at the Southeast market for electric transportation and the opportunities therein. For those of you who are not aware of the Southern Alliance for Clean Energy, we are also a regional nonprofit, work really closely and collaboratively with SEIA on electric transportation issues. Our focus is to promote responsible and equitable energy choices to ensure clean, safe, and healthy communities throughout the Southeast. We work in clean transportation, clean energy, energy efficiency. My name is Stan Cross. I serve as the Electric Transportation Policy Director, and you can flip the slide. And I am also the proud owner of a Nissan Leaf. This is my second Leaf, a 2017, and I love it. It's a great vehicle. And so I not only advocate for electric transportation, but I experience it every day. And prior to joining SACE, I co-founded and ran a business called Brightfield Transportation Solutions that for a decade deployed EV charging infrastructure across the region. So I'm excited to be participating kind of in this policy and advocacy work after being out there deploying infrastructure that I use every day as I drive my relief around the region. Just for context setting, you know, when we talk about the economic development opportunity here in the Southeast, I want to make sure that we're realizing that this is obviously a global opportunity, right? Auto manufacturers and the supply chain and charging infrastructure companies and the software tech companies that support that charging infrastructure are playing in a global landscape. And so we look at EV adoption worldwide, we see a tremendous amount of opportunity for the US to lead in this transportation revolution, not only here domestically, not only here in our region, but globally. Go on the next slide, Ann. So when we look at Southeast EV sales through June of 2020, we see strong growth over time, and this growth parallels what we're seeing nationwide. Even though the Southeast is lagging in adoption relative to our population, we are seeing the growth, and that's really the important indicator. And it's going to be really interesting to kind of look at these last 2 quarters of 2020 and into the beginning of 2021 to see how the EV market responds to the pandemic and related economic crisis. So far, we've been seeing resilience in the EV space, and the EV sales are faring better than automotive sales writ large. Next slide, Ann. This slide is looking at the states that we focused on for our transportation electrification report. We focused on Alabama, Florida, Georgia, the Carolinas, and Tennessee. And these lines indicate sales growth by state. And what's really, I think, telling about this graph is that if you look at Georgia, which is the red line, right, you see that really early market growth that was spurred on by a state tax credit. And you see the drop off that correlates to the ending of that state tax credit. Whereas in a state like Florida, you see sort of this steady increase in good policy, mostly on local levels, that's kind of led to this steady growth in the Florida market. And with others, you see sort of this jump that happened in 2018. And that correlates to both policies getting put in place on a state level, but also the range of vehicles increasing and price points starting to come down, particularly the release of the Tesla Model 3. So you can go ahead to the next slide, Ann. So when we looked at different indicators in the Southeast, we were most interested in sort of what's happening in the manufacturing space and kind of how that relates to economic development opportunities. And what's interesting about the Southeast is when you look at passenger EV. So first off, we just looked at the passenger EV markets. This is light duty. For 2021, when we update this report, we'll be able to bring in medium and heavy duty data as well. But when we were doing this analysis, that data was just too difficult to come by. So we focused on the passenger vehicle market, which is the one that's matured the most. And when we look at manufacturing employment and manufacturing investment, we see the Southeast doing really well, especially in that passenger EV manufacturing investment category, where we've been able to get 28% and growing of the nation's investment so far in electric transportation brought to our region, which is really important for economic development growth and job growth. When it comes to EV sales, we're only bringing in regionally about 10% of what's happening nationwide, which we'd love to see grow. And we think that effective state policies that are coming online and increased utility investment in the space is going to help move that along. The other piece that I want to point to are the last 2 indicators at the bottom. Utility investment, that $32 million is no longer correct. The North Carolina Utility Commission just approved Duke Energy's electric transportation pilot filing in North Carolina for about $25.5 million. So that number is now closer to $60 million of investment by utilities. So now in the Southeast. And government funding has also gone up, with the state of Tennessee committing $35 million to retraining workers at the GM facility in Spring Hill to build out electric vehicles. And also not included in these numbers is the Arrival investment that Ann mentioned, which is a $46 million investment by Arrival in the plant they're building in Rock Hill, South Carolina, that'll be providing 240 jobs. So all these indicators point to opportunity in the Southeast, and to really maximize that opportunity, over the next 1 to 3 years, state policies are going to play a critical role in continuing to make the region attractive to EV manufacturers, charging manufacturers, and the supply chain. Next slide, Ann. And just to kind of hit on the point that this manufacturing opportunity in the light, medium, and heavy duty space is scattered throughout the region, right? And more dots are being added every month. But it's a regional opportunity. Some states have more opportunity than others. Alabama, being the 4th largest exporter of automotive technology and product in the country, has a tremendous opportunity, as does South Carolina and Georgia with port access and other investments that have been put in place, as does Tennessee with longstanding presence of Nissan and expansion of other automakers in Tennessee cities. But even states like Florida and North Carolina that are a little lighter on the manufacturing have opportunities from the tourism sector when we look at economic development as well. So it's a regional opportunity that's going to be best served by regional thinking. Next slide, Ann. And just to conclude, if you're interested in downloading the full report from our website, you can go to this address. My dog is very excited about that, if you hear him barking in the background. So if you want to support my dog, you can download at that address. Thanks, Ann.
Thank you so much, Stan. I think that was just so appropriate for these days of having that send you off in the conclusion of your slides. So there were a couple of questions, Stan, that came in on the chat while you were speaking. And so what I'd like to do now is transition and open it up for questions for any of the things that either Stan or I presented on, and then we will move into our discussion. To address the questions that came in on chat, there's a question about excuse me, I gotta manage it over here. Does the utility investment that Stan mentioned also include the Duke pilot in South Carolina that was also recently approved? And Stan, I don't know if you want to answer that question. I did respond that those numbers have not yet been updated for your slides for either South Carolina or North Carolina, but if you could just affirm that.
That is correct.
Yeah, great. Next question is, does the charging infrastructure numbers that you have on your slide include both public and private charging infrastructure?
Just public charging infrastructure, so it does not include private.
Great, thank you. If you have any other questions, please put them in the chat, or it is open for you to unmute yourself and ask a question. Any questions for Stan or I on the data we've shared so far? All right. Well, we will move forward. So now that you've heard those updates, have a general sense of some of the recent developments in the Southeast, we really would like to hear your thoughts on inputs about what we can do next. So so I'm going to share with you all first questions to get us started here. The first question is, how can the Southeast further support electric transportation manufacturing and growth? And what policies can be adopted that support economic development? And which states offer the biggest opportunities from your perspective? So the floor is open if you would like to unmute. I'm going to call on a few of you. Get us started. Scroll through here.
Hey, Ann.
Yes.
It's Polly Sattler.
Hey, Polly.
I'm really curious, a lot of states do incentives I mean, we need to be most likely lobbying to see state effort to offer incentives to attract those types of businesses. One, and two, I'm curious what other states have done in regard to that. What other economic incentives for encouraging EV infrastructure and the manufacturing?
Great, thank you for that comment, Polly. In general response, some of the things that we are aware of, so the state incentives, like Georgia had for many years, was a huge driver. So for those who don't know, between the years 2011 and 2015, Georgia had a very generous tax credit of $5,000 per vehicle. You could be purchasing that vehicle or leasing the vehicle. And that credit was actually on the books for 10 years prior, but went unused. So when the Nissan Leaf came out, there was a huge adoption rate because people were able to take advantage of that incentive. But we saw our numbers significantly drop when that tax credit was repealed as a part of the large transportation bill that was passed in the Georgia legislature in 2015. Now we've seen those numbers begin to come back up slightly with the increasing number and options of electric vehicles that are now available. But more certainly could be done. And what we've also seen in other states, California, Oregon, Colorado, and others, a lot of those, that growth is driven by either rebates or other tax incentives that are being offered for the purchase or lease electric vehicles. So they are significant drivers. And another point I'd like to emphasize on that, SEIA commissioned a report by GreenLink Analytics in January of this year. Seems like decades ago now, but what we found, we evaluated what the economic development opportunity would be in Georgia if the state implemented a $2,500 tax credit primarily on the purchase of an electric vehicle. And what that report found was that an additional 8,000 to 17,000 EVs would be sold in the 3 years following its implementation. An additional 2,000 to 4,000 jobs would be attributable to a new tax credit, and also found that between $240 and $290 million of net GDP growth to the state would be realized over the 3 years following implementation of that. That also includes $123 million to $242 million in additional net labor income could be realized by the implementation of a tax credit. So it is shown to be a huge driver, both in terms of getting more vehicles on the road, as well as the economic development opportunities for states.
On that
Well,
same,
thank you for that. I mean, in addition, and I think you touched on it a little bit, but it's like the incentives for actually getting the manufacturing for the, that piece of it, in addition to the credits for encouraging the adoption of the technology. I think that would be a way to do as well.
Right, and I haven't seen as much of that, and I'd love to hear from others about that. But one of the things recently, Kay Ivey of Alabama, as I shared that picture of them doing the kickoff for the Mercedes-Benz plants. In fact, she did announce additional support, financial support towards industries through their Rebuild Act that was passed as a part of the legislature last session. So that's one state that's beginning to do additional incentives for manufacturers to invest in those states. So great question.
And I'll just add, Ann, that I think the $35 million investment that Tennessee just announced to retrain workers to build EVs at the GM Spring Hill Assembly Plant is a great example of sort of a win-win-win of a state putting money in to help an automaker transition to electric vehicles while directing that funding to the preservation of jobs.
Great, thanks, Stan. There are others? Pete? Pete, I see that you made a comment in the chat about manufacturing follows adoption rates. Has anyone looked at the correlation between manufacturing and adoption rates? Is anybody here able to respond to that? I am not aware of that, Pete, but that's a great question.
Yeah, it would seem to me that there would be some sort of correlation there. The manufacturers want to be close to their base, so we're seeing that right now. There's a manufacturer of the smaller electric vehicle that's looking at Central Florida area because it's their next biggest order supply. So. I'm wondering if we need to concentrate on making sure the adoption is there versus looking at the incentives. You know what I mean? So making it fertile ground for people to look at Florida or Southeast in general.
Mm-hmm. Any comments or response to Pete's comment? All right, another question through the chat. Has there been an income tiered incentives tax credit? And yes, there are several examples of that, primarily that have been adopted in some of the Western states, where there have been caps on for example, a $60,000 cap. You can't spend any more than that on a vehicle in order to get the tax credit. There's also been income limits. So if you, have an income, above a certain amount, you are not eligible for some of the incentives as well. The idea behind some of those is to help get more middle, lower income individuals in electric vehicles. So that has, really many of these are new, so we don't know the full implications of those yet. I know that Alexa with Fourth is on the call. Alexa, I don't know if you're live or just have it in the background, but are you able to share any information about that?
Hi, Anne. Do you mind repeating the question?
Sure. One of the questions is that have there been income-based tiered incentives implemented in other states? And I know there's been some that have been adopted
Yeah.
out closer to you. Could you share any information on that?
To be honest, I probably would have said that very much the same thing that you already said, it being in the Western states. I'm located in California, and we've seen it both on the income for higher income folks, not necessarily wanting to incentivize more of the folks, like you just said, that are lower income or middle income. Yeah, I'm sorry, I would just repeat what you already said. You got it right.
Thanks, Alexa. Appreciate your chiming in. All right. All right, another question. Seems a concern that infrastructure of EV charging stations is so limited. What are some of the latest trends or incentives to increase installations of charging stations? And I can certainly respond to that, but Stan, would you like to take that one?
Repeat the question for me, Ann. I was distracted.
Sure. Seems a concern that infrastructure of charging is so limited. What are some of the latest trends or incentives to increase installations of charging?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think the two Duke pilots being approved in South Carolina and in North Carolina are going to help move that forward in those two states. Both include DC fast charger deployments, and in North Carolina, a robust level 2 charger deployment. We also saw in Florida just last month the first rate design tariff to get approved by a commission here in the Southeast, and that was from Florida Power and Light. And FP&L put together what they're calling a demand charge limiter that limits the amount charging station owners will pay for electricity at fast chargers. For those of you who are not aware of demand charges, they've been negatively impacting the business model for DC fast charger deployment. So addressing that barrier is significant. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in Florida, and we expect other utilities in Florida to follow suit with that demand charge limiter. That can prove to be a great model for the Southeast that can really help get charging infrastructure deployed at scale.
Thank you, Stan. Another question here. A comment by Lauren. Hi, Lauren. I saw something recently in Colorado that was interesting. Publicly funded affordable housing projects are now required to have EV-ready parking spaces. I think that's a great tie-in of really connecting to critical issues of equity to make sure that there is access to charging for lower income communities. And for those who don't know what EV-ready parking spaces are, City of Atlanta, for example, has passed an ordinance that requires that new construction or building of new parking garages are required to ensure that the wiring for charging infrastructure is put in place at the time of construction, and or if a building is retrofitted or there's a renovation, that the wires must be run to accommodate for EV charging. Thanks for sharing that.
And Ann, just to follow up on the earlier question about infrastructure, that EV make ready building code opportunity at the state level in the Southeast is significant. Because when you deploy infrastructure, a significant amount of the cost is retrofitting, putting in the conduit and upgrading the electrical service at a panel box if a building hasn't been prepared for infrastructure. So if we start getting that in place in the Southeast and new buildings are ready for charging stations, it'll significantly reduce the cost of installing infrastructure, which will help get more of it on the landscape.
Great, thank you.
Hi, Ann, can you hear me okay?
Yes, hi Terrence, how are you?
Hi, hey, I'm doing good. Hey, look, I'm so glad I was able to tune in for a little bit this morning. I've got to hop off for a couple of minutes in a few minutes for a presentation, but I'm so glad that buildings were mentioned because, you know, from the Department of Energy standpoint, I just want to encourage from a policy standpoint. We've been working very hard over the last year to get programs, more high performance home building programs from the residential side into more states' low income housing tax credit programs through their qualified allocation plans. So if the more demand that we can get for, and the more incentive that we give for developers to build more zero energy ready home projects, you know, we take into account EV chargers, you know, into our homes as well as solar hookups. So the more electricity options that home buyers and builders have, the better that we can work together to decrease carbon footprints in buildings, as well as, you know, increasing the demand for EVs and making sure that homes are ready to be able to charge those EVs at home. So I just wanted to mention that from a policy standpoint, any help that we can get in working with state legislatures and state housing agencies to advocate for programs like zero energy ready homes to be indoctrinated into their state QAPs it becomes a tremendous option for developers to use, and it helps overall on the building side as well as on the transportation side to reduce electricity use, or to reduce our carbon footprint. So just wanted to make sure to mention that.
That's a great comment. Appreciate the suggestion. Great idea. Could I ask a question back to you? Is the BTO office working with the Vehicle Technology Office on any joint programs that would support both kind of the building and vehicle electrification?
You know what? I don't think we have any current funding opportunities where we're combining, but I can tell you that more and more joint funding opportunities are occurring throughout our EERE sector, and so I would tell you to definitely let's have some talks after this to see if we can continue to encourage that usage, because maybe we can put together a project or a funding opportunity where we can kind of combine these sectors and these areas that we're looking to try to improve on.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Hey, thanks a lot, guys. I'm so glad I was able to tune in. Keep up the great work.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to shift over here to additional questions. Recommendation, it seems like to get EV going, the most important thing is to electrify public vehicles and public transportation to electric first. I feel like public transportation is huge as it supports electrification and equity. Great suggestion. Also an opportunity to work with car share companies to provide incentives for EVs in their network. What we've seen at the West as EV chargers and low-income housing has not panned out, since low-income households really don't have the means to get an EV yet. It's important to keep active transportation as a pillar in the policy making. I'm curious if anybody has any recommendations of programs that are achieving success in getting low-income community and individuals in the vehicles. As I mentioned at the introduction, what I've seen is, vehicles and charging really need to grow together. It's not a chicken or the egg sort of situation. These things really need to be happening in conjunction to support one another, in a similar means of how Tesla has deployed their vehicles. Anybody have any comments on those programs?
Hey, and this is Wesley. And
Yes.
Morning all. Wesley Holmes with Southeast Energy Efficiency Alliance. I don't really have an idea on those programs, but the point on it raises the issue of equity in terms of equitable access, equitable opportunities. And it makes me think about Pete's question about, manufacturing largely following, or should largely follow, consumer adoption rates. But, when you look at the data, we're actually seeing a different breakdown of that. Where you see the highest market penetration rates are actually far away from where the manufacturing of electric vehicles is actually happening. I mean, if you look at manufacturing trends, they're in communities like Chattanooga, Tennessee, North Charleston, South Carolina, places in Mississippi, places in Kentucky, rural communities where manufacturing has traditionally happened, and where incomes are also traditionally much lower than in the large urban areas where we see concentrations of EV purchases. So I'm actually curious if people on this line are aware, or what are manufacturers or local governments doing to ensure that the people who've been producing vehicles and shouldering the burden of the environmental impact of producing vehicles, what is being done, what can be done to ensure that those communities that have been providing us with transportation have equitable access to the electric vehicles that they're now being asked to produce, and will continue to bear the brunt of whatever environmental impact that has. So I'm curious if anybody has any insights about what the OEMs, the manufacturers themselves, are providing in terms of incentives and opportunities for their employees, or local governments that are home to the manufacturing facilities, what they're doing in terms of local sales credits, tax options, or any kind of localized targeted investment in the communities where this work's being done, and where I think they're owed some opportunity to get access to this technology. So I'd be interested if Meta has any thoughts or ideas about what's happening in that vein.
This is Ben from South Carolina. I don't know about in the Southeast, but I do know in the Midwest with, you know, the LG battery plant and GM, they do have chargers on site that employees can use for workplace charging. So I know that's not, you know, a monetary incentive, but, you know, a nice incentive if, you know, you have an electric vehicle and you're able to charge at work.
I think too, Wes, one of the things that you're pointing to is the, you know, lack of a well-articulated rural community value proposition, or for that matter, you know, the good work of segmenting the different populations across the Southeast and really understanding how to convey electric transportation benefits to communities in ways that resonate with those communities. And so I think there's a lot of, I agree that there is work that the manufacturers, you know, themselves can do to treat their employees well and give them opportunity to access electric transportation. But I think there's a lot of education and outreach work still to be done to message those value propositions both to the community themselves, but also to their representatives in state government, so that as EV policies move through that are looking to open up access, folks who have rural constituents or folks that have low to moderate income constituents understand that those demographics are going to benefit from electric transportation as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Sam. I'm actually curious, as part of your analysis or anybody else's, like looking at the political landscape. So the state representatives who represent places like West Point, Georgia, or Huntsville, Alabama, or Chattanooga, Tennessee, are they actively champions for EV enabling and EV incentivizing policies within their state governments? Are they champions for those things, or are they not? And this is just genuine. I don't know how they show up in these conversations.
They're champions in the waiting. So I think the potential is definitely there, and I think as you know, the economic development opportunity becomes more real and more realized, I think that you're absolutely right, Wesley, and those representatives being fantastic targets for those of us in the space to be reaching out to and working with to convert them into heroes for electric transportation.
Great. Thank you, Stan. I'm going to go back over to the chat. There's a few questions that have come in. Question, let's see, from Sepida. Are there any programs for the repurchase or financing as opposed to incentives? And I know there has been some low interest financing that's been available in some areas. I have not seen that show up in the Southeast. In terms of repurchase, I don't know if I don't know specifically what you're referring to there, maybe for used vehicles. And one thing I will share is there are a number of used electric vehicle manufacturers, dealerships that are popping up. Most notably south of Atlanta, BMW Auto Sales is focused on selling used electric vehicles. So they have a huge inventory of used vehicles. So you can get a Nissan Leaf for, you know, $7,000 to $10,000, a great option for somebody, you know, first car. So that is important. Interestingly, though, a lot of his sales have been to folks in Canada. They are buying them much more quickly than folks in the US are. And I think we need to look at how, you know, what are some of the factors affecting that, and how do we change that situation? A question from Joy. Let's see. I think there's a broader opportunity for off-road electrification technologies, including port equipment, cranes, forklifts, to incentivize manufacturing in the Southeast. and purchasing those vehicle types more downstream. JEA is doing that. That's a great comment. I will share that through the Diesel Emissions Reduction Act and the Southeast Diesel Collaborative that has been around for a decade and a half or so now, they have done quite a bit in, for example, port electrification in South Carolina and in Georgia. And that is a great opportunity. Agree with that. And that a good deal of that funding is primarily from the federal government. All right. So Alexa Diaz from Fourth, who spoke earlier, has put some information here in the chat I want to direct you to with the California Incentive Program, the Clean Vehicle Grants.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And Ann, one other thing on financing, that could be directed towards the off-road vehicles is that, in the Southeast, there's a little over 450, well, just in the states that we looked at. So the micro Southeast, Carolinas, Tennessee, Florida, and Georgia, there's over $450 million in Volkswagen settlement money to be deployed, and only about 15% of that has been deployed to date. So there's a lot of funding tied up in that Volkswagen settlement that can be used for electrification of forklifts, port equipment, et cetera. So that's another area where some advocacy can be done to direct those funds to where, they'll have the highest impact of reducing air pollution, and also have the best impact on the communities that are experiencing that pollution worst and first.
Great. Thank you, Stan. So we have just a few more minutes before our time's up today, and I want to make sure I hear from everyone who wants to share. I have a few final questions to maybe get you thinking. The first is how to invest. What are ways that the Southeast should invest in underserved markets and ensure that funds for charging infrastructure will benefit all groups? One of the big questions that has often come up in utility proceedings is whether or not, funds, ratepayer funds should be used for charging infrastructure. So are there, mechanisms or policies to ensure that all folks are supported in this industry? What mechanisms and policies will support equitable job opportunities? We began speaking about that a little bit earlier. And what data and information is needed? What would help you in your business? Is there things that SEIA can do to support the work that you're doing in this area? So if you want to respond to any of those questions, please unmute yourself or post in the chat. Oops. Now, I would like to maybe call on a couple of the folks in South Carolina. We have a great group there with some of the investment that's happening there. Are there certain things that you're seeing that are being done to increase electrification in rural communities or elsewhere?
And I'm not in South Carolina, but I can respond to one of the questions. I actually heartedly believe that utilities should invest in the EV because we're the one corporation that can actually look at the holistic view of electrification. So if I encourage adoption by putting public infrastructure out, then I'm actually growing my revenue base at the home, because that's where most of the charging is going. So if you look at it in aggregate, utilities are the one place where we can actually look at the entire economic model and cost justify that type of investment because it's necessary or a loss leader to be able to get electrification going. So that's my thought on that.
And this is Catherine Reed. I'm with the South Carolina State Energy Office. Thank you. This has been such an incredible discussion, and I've learned a lot. I just wanted to mention to many of you who may not know, but our state will be conducting an electric vehicle stakeholder initiative starting in January, and we'll be working with the Duke University Nicholas Institute. So that we're really excited about it. And so much of what's being discussed today is going to be top of mind for many of our meetings. So this is just tremendous context for us. And we look forward to reaching out to a lot of you to get some input into our process. So thank you. I just wanted to let you all know that.
And Catherine, thanks for bringing that up. I was going to bring that up as well. And another thing, and to your point about utilities and rural accessibility here in South Carolina, with the Duke ET pilot that was just approved, a lot of those DC fast chargers will be on state highways and through rural communities, and not just centered upon interstate corridors. So that's something that we're looking forward to seeing and seeing how that demonstrates the potential of EVs through rural communities.
Thank you for sharing that. Can you share a little bit more on how you all are perhaps working with Duke on locating some of those chargers?
Yeah, I can say that as the Energy Office and Clean Cities Coalition, we have developed a lot of GIS and infrastructure mapping on where stations should be located based upon the Federal Highways Administration criteria for alternative fuels corridors. And so we did help them, and they have their own infrastructure maps and their own people working on that. But we were able to say that your map kind of lines up with what we were saying, and that's good to see. So they are looking at those infrastructure gaps and to that criteria that the Federal Highways Administration is working with, and trying to replicate that as well through the state highways. So that's there. And I'll say also our placement plan is on our website. If you go to palmettocleanfuels.org and click under resources, you can find the map of where we have suggested placing infrastructure for all different types of fuel types.
Great, thank you for that information.
This is Laura Langham with North Carolina Sustainable Energy Association. We've got a very robust renewable energy database that has solar installations, residential, utility, etc., and has all of the information about each of those. And we also have charging stations in North Carolina in there, and we've got those mapped as well using our GIS. What we're working on, because we want to be able to look at this equity issue more closely, is and we've got it down to zip code for EV registrations, but we're trying to get it even more narrowed down than that to households, so that we can look at some of the equity issues around access and location to charging stations and things like that. So we've been working with DOT to try to get some of that information. And we've had some success, but not to the level of that we'd like it. So just wanted to kind of put that out there. And the other thing I'll say is we're creating for local governments, local government kind of dashboard report that kind of gives them where you were 10 years ago, where you are now as far as solar, all clean energy, charging stations, et cetera, so that they can benchmark and plan for the future. So we're just trying to get as much robust EV data as we can so that we can be even more impactful.
Great, thank you, Laura, for sharing that. Great information. All right, I'm going to swing over here to the chat really quickly, make sure I haven't missed anything. But if anybody has any other questions and want to unmute yourself, please feel free to do so. It looks like a question I missed earlier. I apologize, Sydney. Sydney Roberts asked, what is the opt-in rate for EV electric rates? And is there evidence that these rates are beneficial to both the utility and the consumer, or the customers? Excuse me. You want to take that one, Stan?
Yeah, I think that, there's I think that question's still on the table. I think that, from an EV rate perspective, the demand charge limiter I referenced before, it's going to be put in place in FPL territory in Florida. Tampa Electric Company is also looking at some innovative solutions. And, a lot is happening in the municipal utility space and the electric member co-op space that's difficult to capture because it's not happening through formal proceedings with regulators that is publicly available. So folks like Pete Westlake and his team at Orlando Utility Commission, there's some really innovative stuff happening in North Carolina with Roanoke Electric and some of the other electric co-ops. Cobb EMC is doing some really great work to sort of look at how rates can be brought to bear. I myself, with my Nissan Leaf, I charge it with a co-op here in North Carolina called French Broad Co-op. And French Broad provided me a charging station for my home at no charge. And in exchange, they turn off my charger every day from 3 to 6 p.m. when they are concerned about their peak load. So that's an example of how I was able to get a level 2 charger, and the utility is able to make that work best for their resource needs.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, there are a range of different rates, and as Stan mentioned, many of these are happening with rural electric co-ops. For example, Cobb EMC here in Georgia, they offer a 0 rate over if you charge overnight. Georgia Power here, it's 1 cent per kilowatt hour. Between the hours, I believe it's 11 and 7. It is a whole house rate, so they do charge you more if you charge during the day. So that's closer to, I think, around 21 cents. So the benefits will be different depending on what your individual needs are at home. There is another co-op a little bit farther south in Georgia as well, where they have been offering, if you let them know you want that you have an electric vehicle and you notify them, they're actually giving you your electricity to charge if you do it overnight, completely free for that time. So different utilities are taking slightly different approaches, but that's those are some of the trends that we're seeing. All right, I'm gonna look at these final couple of questions that I believe have come in. Regarding the underserved market, has anyone done any co-created program design with actual underserved communities? If not, I would recommend that. I think that is a great program. We are working closely with some of the communities here in the Atlanta market, including EV Hybrid Noir, as well as some communities in North Carolina, to identify what would be most beneficial to communities. But I agree with you, more needs to be done in this area. Thanks for that suggestion. All right, believe we are a little bit over time now, but I appreciate everyone's participation today. Feel free to contact me anytime, or if you have additional ideas that you would like for SEIA to look at or consider as we're developing some guidance resources for our policymakers in looking at this issue. I appreciate your engagement today and tuning in. And please check out the other sessions that SEIA is offering later today, as well as on Wednesday and Thursday. We have a number of other great sessions, both on energy efficiency, equity, and electric transportation. So thank you all again for your time today. Oh, and I had one other thing I wanted to make sure everybody was aware of. Ben did mention earlier some of the work that South Carolina is doing, but we also are a part of a regional Southeast stakeholder initiative that's being co-led by the Nicholas Institute and Georgia Tech in partnership with SEIA, SACE, Greenlots, Alliance for Transportation Electrification, and others. If you'd like to get involved in that, please feel free to email me. I'm at ablair, ABLAIR, @sealliance.org. And then there also is the regional EV information exchange of the energy offices. So those are a few of the regional activities going on. I encourage you all to get involved in any way you're available to do so. But that wraps us up for today. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.